Hi, everyone. Welcome again to our podcast, Don't Blame the CRM. My name is Mikko. I'm one of the co-founders and product manager at Vainu. And today I have a guest from Denmark, Lotte, who's working as one of the partners at a company called Helion B2B. Welcome to the show, Lotte.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Lotte, and I'm a co-founder and partner at Helion B2B, and my everyday work is to lead our SaaS companies. So I'm in charge of all the SaaS clients that we have that usually works on HubSpot.
Yeah. So HubSpot will definitely be one of the topics we focus on today. And you said B2B SaaS, so that's one of your focus areas, or ICP, so to speak.
Yeah, so in Helion, we have two different ICPs. So we have like production companies, and then we have SaaS companies, and I'm in charge of working with all the SaaS companies. So we've been working with quite a bit SaaS companies over the years, and quite excited to be here to discuss SaaS and HubSpot, and also data management in the CRM, because that's a crucial part of succeeding as a SaaS company today.
Yeah. And how much of an experience do you have working with HubSpot? I mean, HubSpot has been around quite some time, but there's always something new popping up. Like what's your history with HubSpot?
Yeah, so I've been working almost daily on HubSpot for the last 7 to 8 years. I have implemented a lot of HubSpot portals, and I've been working both on agency and brand side. So before co-founding Helion B2B, I was the head of marketing in Realisys, which is also a Danish SaaS company that IPO'd a year ago. And I was the one in charge of implementing their whole HubSpot setup as well. So I've done it quite a few times, and I have a lot of clients who have been working on HubSpot for maybe 2 or 3 years before signing on with Helion. And I've done a lot of data cleanup, a lot of data management, and I think I've almost seen it all by now.
And when it comes to B2B SaaS, of course, many of those companies and people working in those companies, they're quite tech savvy. At least that's my feeling, that typically B2B SaaS, they are sort of early movers and they know technologies quite well. They're also keen on using technology. But what is typically a starting point when you get, let's say, a new customer? Maybe they are new to HubSpot, it's B2B SaaS, and they start thinking how to build the HubSpot setup, especially when it comes to the CRM. So I would imagine that they have to start thinking about the data setup, like what are the objects they have, what are the properties they use, what are the workflows they want to build. But how do you typically start with a new customer, and especially when it comes to data management?
Yeah, so it can go 2 ways. So we can have SaaS companies that are moving away from old systems into HubSpot, or like really early SaaS companies where HubSpot is their first CRM system ever. And then we can have SaaS companies that have been around for quite some years and have a lot of data in HubSpot, and they need some help to clean it up, get the right processes going, the right workflows, and so forth. But if we start with the other part of the clients that we work with, typically we go through the data that they have had in the previous CRM. So we look through things that we need to migrate, of course, and what is the quality of the data we need to migrate. We need to figure out what is needed to be migrated and how that translates into HubSpot properties per se. And also if we need to delete some records of stuff that we don't really need to migrate. So most often we look at context and see if do we have an email, do we have a phone number, do we have some kind of unique identifier that makes sense to move over, instead of just moving contacts without an actual phone number or email to get in contact with or to use for nurture as well. Of course, we look into how old the contacts are, when was the last activity and stuff before migrating. Then we also look into, properties in HubSpot. We need to ensure that we have the best possible data environment. So we always talk about how can we translate the objects you have in your previous CRM to HubSpot properties, and also if we need to build custom properties, which custom properties to build. So if a lot of the companies that we have been working with who has been on HubSpot for years, a lot of them, they do, build a lot of custom properties, and sometimes they build a custom property just because they needed it once, and then they forget about it, and then it just make it really, really hard to filter on specific information in the CRM system, right? So what we do is that, like rule of thumb, we only create custom properties if we're, if they're needed along in our sales process or in marketing and nurture. And then we always look into, okay, so how do we solve for this problem? So if it's like one specific data point we need, so it's like maybe one out of a lot of different data points, it can be like which buyer persona it is, then it won't be multiple buyer personas, then we will do like a drop down select. So there is one answer to the question, like one specific answer for the property. And then, of course, we also look into multiple checkboxes if we need to check their web technology, or we need to check which product they have bought or something like that. So we try to stay away from text fields if we're not working, free text fields, if we're not working with a third-party data integration, because of course we need text fields sometimes to send that information in. But text fields can also be, it can give a lot of errors because people, they, misspelling, or it can be a lot of different things, right? So
let's talk about custom properties more in a moment. I want to take a step back and ask, like, when you see new B2B SaaS company, and let's say that they've been working with HubSpot, and you go in and you do that sort of audit where you review the situation. How is it typically? Like, do you see that CRMs are in a very good shape data-wise, or do you typically feel that it's somewhat chaotic? And if it is, like, what are the most common things? Are there those that you mentioned, that contacts do not have emails or phone numbers, maybe contacts not associated with companies, maybe lots of duplicates? Like, how is the situation when you go in?
So we've been around for 1.5 years now. And as I said, I've been working with HubSpot almost for 8 years. And I think that 1 or 2 times the last 1.5 years founding Helion, I've seen 1 or 2 CRMs that was in a good shape. And the rest has been somewhat chaotic. And the things that we see is, like you said, then we have a lot of contacts without emails or phone numbers. We will have a lot of companies, maybe because it has been, imported in bulk without associated contacts. And that could be, fair enough if you're using these companies for ABM campaigns or stuff like that, but they need to have a use case, right? Then we also see that we often have a lot of contacts that are unqualified, or maybe like they should be life cycle stage other, because it's internal, employees being SQLs and MQLs because they, been downloading things on the website. And we see a lot of bounce contacts. If you haven't been on top of your email performance in HubSpot, you most often have a lot of globally bounced dead contacts. We look into stuff like marketing contact, non-marketing contact. We look into if we have consent to actually nurture them, if that is set up correct only on the forms. We can also see that a lot of the, when doing the audits, most often a lot of the companies that we work with, they create a new form every time they build a landing page or anything like that. And then again, it's just so hard to filter in the CRM on form submissions, in workflows, because you build something new every time you need it, right? Yep. So instead, you can build some global forms. You can say, this is our, this is the form that we use for webinars. And then you use that form every time, but you filter based on the landing page, or you filter based on, when in the time frame that you are promoting this webinar. So there is a lot of things that you can do where you don't need to create more and more and more assets in the system, because it just keeps growing, and you just you can't really find anything because there is so much at the end. So a lot of it is about cleaning up, building based on best practices, and of course making sure that we have the right automation set up to actually also make sure that we have the right data. And that could also be required things on the pipelines. If we need to make sure that before we send the contract, we have the VAT number, if we don't use third-party data to give us VAT number, because we need to send that information to accounting and so forth. Yep. So really trying to build all our processes into the system.
Yep. And then regarding custom properties, I think most HubSpot professionals understand and know the concept. But if we talk about company object, you already mentioned that often like free text custom properties maybe not good, and I get the point. It's very difficult to build lists, for example, based on that, because people can write whatever they want. So it's not super useful compared to drop-down menu. But what are some of the good examples like of custom properties, especially when it comes to company object in HubSpot?
Yeah, so for example, we will have some use cases where we have a lot of different departments working in HubSpot, but we can only have one owner, right? So we can have like an owner going from marketing to sales, maybe to customer success. So sometimes we need to know who is the success responsible or the project manager besides the contact owner or company owner, which would most often be a salesperson, right? So that could be one of the great use cases to have, like you can see who is also working on this specific company or who is part of the specific team. Some of the other things can be very specific to the product, so to your own product as a SaaS company, right? So we have a lot of different SaaS companies, of course, where we have integrated their whole platform into HubSpot. So if they have a lot of freemium users or they have free trial users, and most often with the SaaS companies that I work with, we have worked in some kind of a tier limit. So if we have like a freemium user, once they reach a certain tier of whatever usage of the product. So if you translation software, let's see that in the freemium, you can use 5,000 words for translation, and then you need to pay. Then we will have that information shipped directly from the SaaS platform into the company page on HubSpot, right? So in that way, we can see, okay, how many words are being translated now? When was the last login date for this company on our platform? And then we can start to build a lot of great automation, outreach automation, sequences, and filtering in the CRM based on last login date, free trial start, free trial ends. All these different usage tiers that we work with is some of the most beneficial custom properties that we usually work with.
Yeah, I think for SaaS companies, bringing product usage data, I think that's a really smart idea. And let's talk about like lead scoring in a moment, because I would imagine those properties can be used there. In terms of custom properties, yes, lots of things, lots of properties regarding contacts. I can see lots of use cases. For us, of course, when we integrate Vainu with HubSpot, we actually automatically create custom objects, typically more specific industry data or web traffic data. So I think I also agree with your point that free text is not ideal. It has to be, or often it has to be, some sort of single pick list or multi-select pick list, because then building lists is easy to do based on that, and also building automation based on that is easier. But I know that you've been working a lot with your customers when it comes to lead scoring and I guess account scoring. Product data, I guess, is obvious, but what are some of the properties you use, or as attributes? I guess that's how it's built in HubSpot, that you have some positive attributes, and those are always properties, I guess. But can you give us some examples how your customers are building lead scoring models in HubSpot?
Yeah, of course. So of course we built our lead scoring framework based on the HubSpot properties, and of course also built for SaaS. So of course we look at some demographic data because we want to make sure that maybe we know the job title, so we can see if it matches our ICP. Maybe we have built in our buyer personas into HubSpot, and we want to make sure that if we know the buyer persona, well, that is already a quite good knowledge of if it's again matching the ICP, or if it's a negative buyer persona, then we should maybe give them some negative scoring. Of course, we look at the email, we look at the phone number, but what is quite interesting is actually looking into like ICP data. So if you bring on a third party, actually like yourself, like Vainu, then you can start scoring on, you know, specific industry. You can start scoring on employee counts. You can score on web technologies. Some of these third party data vendors, you can also score on revenue. So there is a lot of ICP data that you can feed directly into HubSpot, and then you can score based on that. And I think that that is a really powerful use case for third-party data to make sure that we actually enrich the data we already have in HubSpot, and then see, okay, does it match the ICP or does it not match the ICP?
So are you combining? So basically you have some contact properties. You mentioned job title, makes sense. And then you can have company properties like industry data and technographics and employee count and revenue. Do you also combine that product data that you mentioned if they have connected their own product data, like the number of, for example, that translation company, how many words have they used, like when it's approaching that limit of 5,000? Like, do you use all of them to come up with the final score, or how does that work?
Yeah, so what we do is that we always recommend to score a lot based on recency. So we score based on when was the last login date. Has they been active? Have they been using the product, right? So like product last login date. We use also, you know, last website visit. We use also, if we have like marketing consent, we can also look into if they engaged with our emails. But what we do is that we also score based on, the product. So we can score based on, you know, if they started a freemium subscription and if they turned active. So if we can see that they actually started using some of, started filling out some of the limits on the usage tiers, we can see that they're active, right? And also if it's a SaaS company who both have like product tours, or they have both a freemium, but the possibility to go into free trial mode to get the full experience and stuff like that, then we can also score based on starting free trials and so forth. But I think that one of the really important things to think about when scoring in HubSpot is actually using some of the possibilities to score based on recency, and also to give negative scores. So if the last product logged in date is more than like 15 days or 30 days based on the product, of course, is it everyday use or not? Then we should most definitely also give some negative points, because essentially we want to use lead scoring for the leads that are becoming more and more warm and ready to be handed over to sales.
And do you always score leads, or do you also take sort of the account-based approach that you also score companies? And then follow-up question, when these either leads, either contacts or companies, when they hit a certain threshold, like, do you just have one threshold and then they get sent over to sales, or do you have like different thresholds that certain companies that get very high scores, sales will jump into them right away, and the others will go into, I don't know, some sort of ABM campaign, you keep nurturing them? Like, how do you actually make it actionable, that people actually take action based on the lead score?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So actually we build a lead score here in Helion that we call Radar, Research and Revenue. And that's based on a point system going from 0 to 75. And there is different owners and there is different definitions, of course. So if you're like between 0 and 25 points, you will be a lead and you will be owned by marketing. And we will just, let the marketing machine work on the leads, because maybe we will nurture them a bit with the newsletter, but it's kind of like an inactive stage because maybe we only have a permission, right? Then from 25 to 49, we will go into what we call radar, which means that these leads should be on our radar, but they will still need some nurturing. So marketing will still be the owner, but maybe we will enroll them in some different lead nurturing flows. Maybe we will target them with specific product or feature ads, because we are building audiences in HubSpot and feeding them to our campaign managers on LinkedIn or Meta or wherever we are using our advertising money. And then, of course, we have the research part, which is 50 points to 74. And the owner here will most often be inside sales, meaning that we will start monitor the leads. We will do research on who they are, how they got these points, and whether if we need to gather some additional information. So they should be matching our ICP now. And in HubSpot, if you have like Sales Pro or Sales Enterprise, you will be able to do automated sequences. So for research leads, it will be quite nice to enroll them in these sequences, and maybe trying to get them to start a free trial. You can build a free trial sequence, book meeting or whatever, based on which SaaS product you have, right? And then 75 points and more will be revenue leads. So these will be leads who continue to show buying intent. And if they're not already soon to be a customer or already as a customer, then sales should most definitely be targeting them. So right here, we will see, is it a good fit? But they would be, you would let sales work the magic on them if you still have salespeople. But of course, if you're a product-led SaaS company, these will be the leads that are upgrading their subscriptions, right?
Yeah, and that obviously is and sounds sophisticated and efficient. Like, what's your feeling about B2B SaaS companies using HubSpot? Like, are many of them already on that level that they have these 3 different segments like you just described, and they have workflows in place and automation in place whenever based on the lead score, for example? Or is this only for the sort of the most advanced users are already there? Like, how advanced is the market at the moment?
Yeah, so I would say people that are really, working with the life cycle stages, scoring, handing over leads automatically, using the scoring model with actual ICP data, product data as well. They are quite advanced in their use of HubSpot, and most often also the whole organization is using HubSpot from marketing to sales to service, because you have all the data points right there in the CRM system, and you can see when they're ready to upgrade, when they're ready to downgrade, and so forth. But most often, a lot of them will be, you can also be, just running a good MRR, and you just really want to, do even better, or, actually get even more out of the leads that you have in your system and put it into process. So I think a lot of this is also revolving about processes and data management and getting the best out of the contacts you have in your system. And the more information we gather on both contact and company level, the more data we can get from our actual SaaS platform inside of HubSpot will make it much more easy for you to do really advanced scoring, outreach, automation. And I think that, of course, you should not automate everything. But if you have the data, you can automate almost everything. And what I see with the companies we work with, especially those really going 100% for product-led growth, we are close to automating almost everything, because we use so much of the data from their SaaS platform to get the insights that we need.
Yeah, I really like the concept of having the product data inside HubSpot, and yes, custom properties are needed for that. Lastly, one topic that I like to discuss, I mean, it's no secret, we're partners, that we're working on the similarity model, so that we have technology to detect lookalikes. And I think lookalikes have been used in B2C quite some time, and it's a very effective approach to build audiences. But now we detect company lookalikes. What are your thoughts? Like, how should we make that available in HubSpot? Because there's, of course, we could just, for each company, we could list that these are the top 20, top 100 lookalikes, or we could use these in-app HubSpot CRM cards, so that we could display that, hey, here we have lookalikes, do you want to create these companies into your HubSpot, all of them at the same time or one by one? We could also build workflows so that whenever a deal goes into closed won states, that would be the moment when we congratulate and say that, hey, do you want to actually use the same approach and go after these lookalikes? But what are your thoughts? What would make the biggest impact for that type of data, lookalike audience, when it comes to companies?
I think that the way to make it most actionable, right, is definitely with the cards in the CRM. So if I close a deal on this specific, let's say, payment solution vendor, I would love for HubSpot to showcase me like there is 10 others, in the same industry, in the same market, where the website has a lot of similarities. Maybe you should go after them, but not only, just create them as a company and then they will maybe just, be stuck in the CRM. But I think it's very powerful to be able to create them and then move them to the ABM tool in HubSpot. Because if you're really utilizing the ABM tool in HubSpot, you can start doing actual account-based outreach on these, but you can also feed it directly again back to ads audiences through HubSpot, and then you can actually start doing awareness campaigns. Maybe you will at some point get a really nice case for the company that you just won, and then you can also do outreach there. But let's play with the thought about doing case-based ABM. Then you could actually in your CRM do segmentation based on all your customers, and then you can get all the cards right based on industry, and then you can do very specific ABM campaigns based on your cases, because you have all the data right there in CRM system.
Yeah,
so I
think
that's
actually one thing regarding case studies. Like whenever you have a case study, of course, most likely the best possible audience for that case study is the lookalike audience, because that most likely resonates quite well with them.
Exactly. So I think that is a powerful tool for pitching, of course, to new customers based on a closed deal. But I see it as being very powerful to actually see the lookalikes on your customers, because most often you would love to have lookalikes on customers maybe that has been with you for quite some time, and you know that it's a good fit solution because they have been onboarded, they're using the product, they're not churning, right? So that is really great data to have for doing outreach or even ABM campaigns on paid media.
Yeah, and I think, some companies, of course, already have Operations Hub in place, and there's some interesting features in that you can use to look at your data quality. But I think regarding the similarity, we've been working on clustering so that we could look at the whole CRM data and then, of course, all the existing customers or cases that have that status or closed won deal, and then creating clusters so that we would see that, hey, we actually seem to have this fintech cluster or payment cluster, like you said, and then the question is that maybe we should start delivering lookalikes for that cluster and place them in the ABM campaigns. ABM tool, what do you mean by that? As a term, I know that there's lots of ABM features in HubSpot, but you mentioned it as an ABM tool. Can you quickly describe what do you mean?
So in HubSpot, if you navigate to contacts and companies, so the actual CRM part of HubSpot, you will have the possibility using their account-based management tool. And often you need to click on it, and then you need to enable it. So it's not just lying there. You need to enable it, but then you will actually be able to filter on industry. You can set a mark that they are a target account. So if you enable this feature in HubSpot, you will get a property saying target account yes, no as a drop down. And all the accounts that you add to yes will be shown in that tool. And then again, you can filter on specific industries and so forth. And then you can start assigning them to specific owners. And you can map out who is the budget holder, who is the negative influence, who is the positive influence, who is the decision maker. You can, and the ABM tool will also log deals, they will log emails, meetings, and so forth. So it's a really great overview tool to see how are we progressing on our target accounts. And it can also be when you start the new year, right? We only just started 2023, and maybe you have a business goal of reaching like top 5% of a specific industry. You can put them in as target accounts, and then you can see throughout the year how you're progressing. So again, if you haven't worked with that tool, I think you should enable it and start snooping a bit around.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out. Lastly, I mean, we have lots of HubSpot people in the audience. If they want to get in touch with you, if they feel that they want to have, if they need help with HubSpot, or maybe they just want somebody to do a quick audit on them, like, I guess the best way to get in touch with you is LinkedIn, right? But do you provide some sort of free audit, or is it more like that it's a discovery meeting where you discuss that? Like how can companies, HubSpot users, engage with Helion B2B?
Yeah, so actually you can do it in quite some different ways. So actually we're leading a HubSpot user group for SaaS companies in the Nordics, and everything is in English. And right now it's mostly online because it's for everyone in the Nordics. But here we're discussing 4 times a year, so every once a quarter, specific HubSpot use cases for SaaS. We have our customers showcasing specific things that we build. The last one I did was specifically on our Radar Research revenue lead scoring model for SaaS as well. So it's very hands-on. So that is one way you can engage with us. And then, of course, we do, as you said before, discovery meetings. So if you have specific questions for HubSpot use cases, want to get in touch in terms of doing an audit or something like that, of course, we are more than happy to do so.
Yeah. And how can people find that B2B SaaS Nordic user group?
Yeah, so HubSpot has like a page for all HubSpot user groups, and if you type in Nordic SaaS, it will come. It's the only one. So it will be there, and then you can subscribe to it, and you will start getting invitations when we do our next sessions. So that's the way to go about that.
So now we have lots of very concrete, actionable takeaways. People need to check out that user group, and also, of course, also the ABM tool you mentioned, and I guess also to do an audit on the data setup they have in HubSpot, and maybe review how they use custom properties, and if the lead scoring is in line with business goals. Thanks a lot, Lotte, for being part of the podcast, and I hope everyone listening to the podcast will have an awesome rest of the day. Thank you.